Drink beer, it's good for you. I'm empty-handed and I'm feeling blue, and I'm gonna drink till the day that I die.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be sharing a favourite among my well-hopped IPA recipes. I call it the Hop Head IPA. This recipe is using what is known as the continuous hopping method that was introduced by the amazing brewery that is Dogfish Head. This is so called because you are regularly adding hops during the last portion of the boil. This all started in 2001 when they brought us the 90-minute IPA. Since then they have released various other versions. I've enjoyed some really spectacular results myself with this method, and today I share with you a favourite recipe that uses it. With this particular IPA style, Dogfish Head will boil for 30 minutes or more before they start adding hops for the last 30 minutes. I do however have a small twist in that I have found that certain types of IPA, a 60-minute or more boil is not always for the best result, and a time saving can be made. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not looking to save time at the sacrifice of good beer. What I'm looking for is the best result within time. For my recipe I skipped the first 30 minutes of the boil and used the continuous hopping method for 30 minutes with a total boil time of just 30 minutes. The results are always very good, and you would not know the difference to taste it. This recipe is by no means a clone of the Dogfish Head brews, it merely uses the continuous hopping method. Okay, let's take a quick look at the recipe now, and I will then explain the ingredients and the effect that they have. Please note that this recipe is for 20 litres or 5.02 US gallons. If you wish to brew a different amount, then you will need to scale the recipe using a calculator. Unfortunately, the hop side are not simple maths. The recipe is shared on the Grainfather recipe tools, and you can use these free tools to scale it to whatever volume suits you. I have a video that explains how to do this on my channel if you have not done this before. I have also shared this recipe in the video description. Let's now take a closer look at the grain bill, starting with the Ale Malt. This is 80% of the grain bill. This is the most popular base malt used in ales. It is known to have a high amount of starch converting enzyme, meaning that it will go far in providing you with the gravity you are looking for in your end beer. It is rather neutral in flavour, and as such is a canvas for other malts and ingredients to interact and flavour with. Next up we have 15% of Munich Malt. This malt is quite similar in actual fact to Pale Ale Malt, but it's kilned at a higher temperature, which means it is higher in flavour and colour. This also means that it's more aromatic and contributes more body. The flavour can be described as a little toasty. It can be quite malty and grainy also. Like any malt, this will vary between malt houses. Munich can be used for up to 100% of a grain bill, but beware. It lacks the power that Pale Ale has, so much more will be needed for the same gravity levels. The difference can be more than 30%. And last but by no means least, we have 5% of Carapils. This is a very lightly coloured crystal malt that increases foam, improves head retention and enhances mouthfeel. It does all of this without adding flavour, but it does add a little colour. If you cannot get Carapils locally, then obtain a low colour crystal malt. This is actually a classic grain bill that is used by a number of breweries for hoppy style beers like Pale Ale and IPAs. You get a great malt backbone from the Pale Ale and a touch of sweetness and taste variation from the Munich. You also gain a great deal of head retention from the Carapils, and this malt blend seems to have the added effect of helping your hops sing. Speaking of hops, this brew uses the following. Firstly, we have Cascade, a classic hop that has the following characteristics. It's floral with elements of citrus and notes of grapefruit. Then we have Simcoe, which offers bright citrus flavours with earthy undertones, aroma of grapefruit, pine and herbs. And we also have Columbus, which is known for its floral and citrus notes in both aroma and flavour. This one has a particularly pungent aroma, which is just great. A common question from my viewers is what hops can be used to substitute if you do not have or cannot obtain the hops in a recipe. So here I have listed substitute hops on screen. These will not be the same, but they will also work if need be. One very important point is that for hop additions that have an IBU score in my recipe, be sure to balance what you use in a brew calculator so that you can achieve the same IBU for each addition as stated in the recipe. This is essentially all additions except the dry hop as shown on screen now. The reason I mention this is that it's very unlikely that your hops will have the same alpha acid percentage, and this of course needs to be taken into consideration to achieve the same desired result from the recipe. This is best done before you consider scaling the recipe also to suit your intended volume. For more information on hop additions, please see my video shown on screen now that is available on this YouTube channel. In terms of yeast, I have selected an American West Coast style for this one, the idea being that this will allow the intended hop character of this recipe to really shine. It will also ferment pretty dry. Another example of yeast that can be used with a similar profile is Fermentis US05. Alternatively, you could use a British yeast instead. I know I would say that, I am British. I particularly like Liberty Bell for example. This yeast will not finish as dry and will add some fruity esters to the flavour of the beer. If you like the sound of that, go for it. Whichever yeast you decide upon, please do keep in mind that it is the fermentation that is the single most important step of the process, and it is important to ensure that your fermentation setup is able to hold a stable temperature and adjust temperature as desired by the yeast that you use. I've made several videos on this topic that can be found on my channel. Okay, let's move on to the brew itself. For this brew I decided to make two mistakes for demonstration purposes. Firstly, I've milled this malt way too finely. Some of this malt is so fine you could make bread with it. To achieve this, I left my gap size exactly where I like it, but I ran the drill at full speed. This worked as intended, and it is a common mistake to be fair. I am not going to use a bag inside the grain basket either, not in this lifetime. I will however be scraping the bottom plate during the boil. The second intentional mistake is that I'm not going to correct the mash until I'm halfway through it. Let's see what effect this has. For a guide for a normal brew, please consult the video on screen now. This one was designed to fail to a certain extent and then hopefully recover. What I am hoping for here is a partially stuck mash that will not allow proper recirculation. This is a warning to all pronunciation please. I am now coming to the part of the video where I may say one or two controversially pronounced words. Please be advised that no harm or offence is intended. But seriously now, there are quite a few of these in brewing, but two a handful of people have mentioned so far are trub or trube, wort or wert, or however you wish to say it, vert, some people even say. Personally, I don't really see any of these common pronunciations as either right or wrong. Both of these are words that did not originate in English, but they have been adopted. As I see it, adoptive words can be said in the original form or in the form of the language they are adopted into. You can probably tell that I'm not a member of the pronunciation police. I'm certainly not alone in this either. It was Colin Kaminsky, if that's how you pronounce it, who said, "I pronounce it wort, and I'm proud of it." I agree with him. John Palmer says trub and trube. Trube to me sounds odd, but I love the sound of trub, so for me it's trub. Feel free to say these how you like. If like me you live in a free country, but most of all relax. They're just words. We know what they mean. So that aside, and it's back to the brew. And let's have a look at how things are progressing. Pretty nasty, huh? You can see here that we have lots of bits in our wort, and it is looking like we have some recirculation issues. 10 minutes later and you can see that our wort is not clearing up, but at least our sink strainer is doing its job and alarming us of the issue and filtering some of these bits out. It was certainly painful to let this continue, but for the sake of the experiment I let it go for 30 minutes before taking action to cure this partially stuck mash. So I paused the brew timer and stopped the pump, then off came the top plate. I added some rice hulls and gave this very compacted mash a good stir, ensuring that the rice hulls were present throughout the depth of the grain. To do a proper and thorough job of this, you need to spend at least 5 minutes doing this. It's an investment. After this, the mash quickly got back to where I like it. The wort even started clearing up some. Still plenty of bits, but thankfully the strainer helps with those. The problem now is that I know that half of my mash is going to lack efficiency, so I decided to try to claw some of this back 50 minutes into the mash by pausing the timer again and stirring the mash for a few minutes. Hopefully this will gain back some of the lost gravity. Another cause for concern was the sparge. This was sadly a minimal sparge at just 7 litres, and it drained way too fast. I was hoping that this would not be the case, but those rice hulls were proving to be more effective than I wished. Not much to do about this really. If the gravity is too far out, then I'll just need to adjust it in the boil by using some spray malt. The crazy things I do for demonstration, eh? While I was waiting for my Grainfather to ramp up to the boil, I prepared some spray malt on my refractometer. Just in case, of course. This boil schedule is pretty busy, so I wanted to use my time wisely. Spray malt wise, I usually just buy extra light. This way it can be used in any brew without altering colour. Here is a reminder of the additions in this boil. There is a hop addition every 5 minutes as well as Irish moss and yeast nutrient. The boil then started and there was a thick amount of protein on top of this one. I also noticed some stray grain bits rise to the surface, so I rescued those by using my trusty sink strainer. Once I had cleared the majority of the protein on top, I started the boil timer and the continuous hopping started. I spent about 1 minute per hop addition making sure this was all stirred in so that it would drop down. This way you're taking full advantage of the hops. Before my 0-minute addition and whirlpool, I paused the timer for a few minutes and sanitized the counterflow chiller. It was then time to add to my hop soup with this generous 0-minute addition. I then whirlpooled for an increasing speed for about 4 minutes. I have to say, the aroma was absolutely fantastic. The whirlpool is for sure one of my favourite parts of the brew. Please note that I am only going as far as putting the head of the whirlpool paddle into the wort. I have found this to be very effective, and with the added assurance that you can go high speed without disrupting your filter. I then always let this stand for 15 minutes before going to the chilling stage. This gives enough time for all the trub to settle to the bottom of the system as intended by the whirlpool. It is unlikely that you will see a cone at the bottom, especially after transfer using a bottom-based pump, but the cone is not desired, just the separation of wort and trub. All went very well here for me, and my filter was fine, but if you have a blockage then it's nothing to get worried about. Simply attach a bicycle pump to the end of the counterflow chiller wort out hose and give it a few pumps. It's a fast fix. Personally, I seldom get a super fast flow as I have extended my wort out hose quite a lot, but it's adequate as you can see. I was quite happy to see that I got a relatively clear wort by the end also, especially considering today's experiment. This is what awaited me after the transfer of this brew. As you can see here, the filter is literally swamped in hops, but still did its job nicely. No need for a hop spider or bags. Besides, I am way too tight-fisted to pay out for the extra 10% of hops to make up for the losses of using such things. By the time you have emptied your wort, you can expect to see this sort of effect despite the whirlpool. This is normal and is caused by the draw of the pump. As I'm sure you can imagine, this was not the most pleasant of cleanups. These are hops in this bag, not grain, in case you wondered. A hop spider would have made that easier, to be fair. The fermentation for this one kicked off especially fast, this being same day footage. I collected just over 20 litres of wort into my fermenter, so that will assist in the brewhouse efficiency. Naturally, this brew did go as planned, but some of that planning was around intended mistakes. Despite this, the gravity loss was not so bad in the end. I feel the manual stirring helped a lot with this. I had a predicted starting gravity of 1.071 and fell just a few points short of that at 1.068, so I almost recovered it, but not quite. It's important to keep in mind that these figures are only predictions anyway. I have a strong feeling that the yeast I am using will actually go down further than the predicted FG of 1.015, so in the end I decided to leave this one as is. So this wraps up another video. I do hope that you found it interesting, informative and enjoyable. Let me know either way. I do enjoy reading your comments, be they positive or negative. All of this feedback is used to shape the videos of the future, so it's very important. So if you did like this video, then please do like it on YouTube. This really helps me out and allows the videos to be seen by a wider audience on YouTube. I have always got a lot of new videos planned for the future, so if you are interested in seeing my new content, then please subscribe for future content. If you have any questions on anything that I have covered in this video or any other video, then please do not hesitate to get in touch with me via YouTube or Facebook. I'm a member of pretty much every Grainfather Facebook group and more. Happy brewing!